Have you ever had an appraisal come in low and then everybody starts panicking? Oh, the deal is dead. Today, we're going to talk about creative strategies that we lenders can help with to help you deal with a low appraisal and save that deal. I'm going to give you a few tips and then end with a success story at the end that you're not going to want to miss. Tara.Ryan here, and today's tip from Tara is low appraisals and strategies to handle it. Number one, we're going to try to dispute the value with the lender. Look, I know what you're saying. That never works. They never change the value, and you're not wrong. They rarely do change the value, but sometimes they do. And it's worth the effort for those few times when it does work and you do provide information that moves the needle and gets you to the value that you want. In addition, during that time when you're doing the dispute, it gives all the parties kind of time to adjust to the news, for the seller to maybe think through, maybe the home isn't worth what I thought. Maybe I might need to give in some. For the buyer to think, oh my gosh, I really love this property. What can I do to make it work? The time for people to marinate on this information is not a bad thing, okay, in most cases. And I have personally had situations where, look, we've got great appraisers, but occasionally somebody's having a bad day, okay? And with correct data, and what I'm gonna tell you is what you want is comps that are actually good comps that sold in the last 6 months, ideally less than a mile from the subject property. And if you have a reason for why you're disputing, for example, the most common that I've found that has worked is if they're using comps that are in a different school district, either different elementary or different high school, and you can point to a difference in the great schools rating of those comps, then you can use that to justify using different comps. So just a tip, always start with a reconsideration of value. With today's regulations, the buyer has to be the one to initiate that, so it's not something that agents and lenders can do behind the scenes. We ought to have the buyer involvement, and it is absolutely worth doing. The second thing that we can do is how can we cover the gap? So what agents typically think is, okay, now buyers have to bring all that money to the table to bridge the appraisal gap. That's not always the case. Okay, the first situation where that's not the case is sometimes we have buyers who are doing really big down payments, like well more than 20% down payment, right? If they've sold a home, they got a bunch of cash, and they're doing 40, 50% down, guys, the appraisal doesn't even matter in that case, okay? Because the terms are the same, whether that loan to value is 50% or 80%. So a low appraisal just makes the loan to value a little higher, but it's the same loan, same rate, same everything. So it's really a don't care for the buyer. So now we're just negotiating on not the financing, but just, hey, do I want to pay over appraised value? All right. So how do we structure the gap? Sometimes there's not actually a gap and the loan can still close in the same way. A related item would be maybe there is a gap and it does impact the loan, but we can still close the loan. So again, if it appraises low, we lenders use the lower of the sales price or the appraised value for our calculation. So it's the loan amount divided by the lower of the sales price or appraised value. If you divide by that lower appraised value, now your loan to value, instead of being an 80% loan, maybe now it's an 88% loan. Okay, guess what? We can still close that loan at the same interest rate, but now there's going to be mortgage insurance. For people with great credit, the mortgage insurance might be very inexpensive, right? It might be $32 a month. And it may be worth it for them to proceed, even if they're paying that delta through mortgage insurance. Okay, as compared to bringing a big hunk of cash additional to closing, right? That's worth exploring. There's also something lenders can do, lender paid mortgage insurance or upfront mortgage insurance. And instead of paying that $32 a month, maybe there's one lump sum that needs to be paid at closing to insure that loan. And that might be something that the buyer and seller could split. Okay, so maybe it's another, $1,500 from both the buyer and the seller, but now the loan can close as they originally planned in spite of the low appraisal, right? So always chat with your lender, call me, and we'll talk through some options of how to get through it, okay? And then lastly, if it's a conventional loan, now you know FHA and VA, that appraisal is gonna stick to the property. But if it's a conventional loan, you can actually change lenders and get a different appraisal. So I do this, and I want you to know that I do this and make this offer to you. Use me for a second chance appraisal. Now, I hope you use me in the first place, because we're going to take great care of you, and we've got the best appraisers. But if your buyer has gone elsewhere, that appraisal comes in low, you can come to me and I can do a second chance appraisal. Here's the thing, if that second appraisal also comes in low, well, now we've got more data to help hopefully convince the seller that they need to do something about it, right? We've had now 2 separate appraisers say it's worth less than what they thought it was. However, I have situations, I'm about to tell you a story, where it does appraise and then we can close just fine. So my pitch to the buyers is, if you come to me for a second chance appraisal and we close that loan, I'm not going to charge you for that appraisal. I'm not going to make you pay for 2 just because you had a really bad experience with the other lender. Okay, so let's use that to get these buyers to at least give it a shot. Success story. I had a listing agent friend of mine call me up, and she was frustrated and upset because she had a deal together. Appraisal just came in. It came in $60,000 below the list price, right? Everybody's panicking. What in the world? Well, come to find out, we figured out that the buyer had been using, the lender that they had been using had also appraised a different home in the same neighborhood. So the buyers had tried to buy a home in the same neighborhood a little bit earlier, and that home also had not appraised. So we went and looked. It was the same appraiser who had appraised both properties and really came in really low. Well, what are the odds that there were 2 homes in the same neighborhood that are both listed so high compared to the appraised value? Anyway, she called me up and said, hey, what can we do? Can we do an appraisal waiver? What can I do to help save this deal? And we talked through it, and I said, hey, perfect opportunity for a second chance appraisal. We took that over, did the appraisal, guys, turned it around quickly. The home appraised. There was nothing wrong with these comps. I personally reviewed it. It's a strong appraisal, great home. We just had some rogue appraiser with this other lender. I don't know why. Value was off. Anyway, these buyers are now closing. They're beyond thrilled. They're so thrilled with this new home, and everybody is now, gosh, it's just a success story, and I love that. I love making people happy and helping you guys close your deals. So, bottom line, next time that you're dealing with a low appraisal, and we are starting to see a little bit of that in our market, okay, as some of those older, higher comps are rolling off. So this is why this is so timely. Don't panic. Call me instead. I'm happy to strategize with you. Let's brainstorm some ideas. And of course, remember us for your second chance appraisals, or even better, send them to us in the first place. We'd love to help.